That road is closed. There are a lot of points on the table. Be smart and get a good finish.
Tempo que a gente não vê uma placa de entrada que não precisa de um conector de energia. Isso alivia bastante porque você não precisa fazer upgrade na sua fonte. E nesse caso aqui, provavelmente muita gente vai precisar fazer upgrade na fonte. É bom lembrar que essa placa continua utilizando ali também a interface PCI Express 5.0 X8. E não quer dizer que você que está num PC mais antigo, tem PCI Express 3.0, não vai poder utilizar a placa. É só que em alguns cenários você vai ter uma perda de performance. Até porque 8 GB de VRAM a gente já chegou na conclusão de que é pouco para 2025, 2026, 2027. Daqui para frente é pouca VRAM. Então, quando você tiver um gargalo de VRAM, uma utilização além daquela que tem disponível, isso acontece bastante, tá? Às vezes você pode errar uma configuração e tal, o jogo exigir mais e vai começar a compartilhar a memória do seu sistema. Você tendo o PCI Express 3.0 na sua plataforma, com uma placa de vídeo que na verdade precisaria de um PCI Express 5.0 X8, o que pode acontecer é dar um gargalo no PCI Express. Olha que legal, você tem gargalo de largura de banda. Por quê? A informação que deveria estar ali armazenada na placa, ela vai ter que ir para sua memória RAM. Só que antes ela vai ter que ir pelo slot PCI Express, passar pelo processador e ir para a memória RAM. E depois tudo isso vai ter que ficar acontecendo. E isso vai jogando uma carga extra no seu sistema, e sistemas mais antigos têm memória RAM mais lenta.
Vai ficando pior.
Então, até o argumento de que a 5050, por ser uma placa de entrada, seria mais interessante para sistemas mais antigos, ele acaba caindo por terra. Então, de novo, muita gente vai comprar 5050. Eu imagino que sim. Por quê? Porque esse público normalmente não é um público muito entusiasta. Ele não tá lá buscando todo esse tipo de informação e talvez nem vá assistir esse vídeo para saber se a 5050 realmente vale a pena para ele. Tem várias nuances num sistema utilizando uma RTX 5050 que ele simplesmente vai ignorar porque fala: isso aí é muito complicado, eu só quero jogar meu Fortnite aqui. E a verdade é que provavelmente para jogar um Fortnite vai estar de boa. Para jogar um CS vai estar de boa. Para jogar um Warzone provavelmente vai estar de boa. Para jogar um Valorant também. E aí vem o argumento da Nvidia de que na verdade essa é uma placa voltada para esportes, para pessoas menos exigentes e tal. O problema é que ela ainda vai custar muito dinheiro. E como que você sabe que vai custar muito dinheiro se você nem viu o preço da placa? É porque dá pra gente pegar o histórico das placas da série 50 que a Nvidia lançou e nenhum dos últimos lançamentos da série 50 foi bom. Começando pela 1650, a 1650 Super foi um pouquinho melhor, mas ainda ruim. A 3050 foi um lançamento ruim, depois a gente teve ainda a 3050 de 6 GB que foi ainda pior, e agora a gente tem a RTX 5050. Então, dados históricos. Tá, Robson, se eu não vou comprar uma 5050, o que eu vou considerar então? Uma 4060? Ah, mas tá mais cara. Mas tá tão mais cara assim? É claro, ainda tem algumas das limitações aqui, mas a gente tem PCI Express 4.0 X8, ainda pode ter limitações em sistemas mais antigos, mas como a gente viu nos testes, é um pouco mais raro. Você também pode considerar uma RTX 3060. A diferença ali vai ser na casa dos 12%, 15% talvez no pior cenário. É claro que nesse caso você perde o suporte ao Frame Generation. Na série 40 já tem Frame Generation. A 50 tem o Multi-Frame Generation. Mas lembra que eu falei? Isso é só pra dar fluidez. Então se você precisa de fluidez para jogos single player, tem a 4060. Se você vai jogar jogos mais competitivos, tipo Fortnite, CS, você pode simplesmente pegar uma RTX 3060. Você já vai ter que gastar com fonte de qualquer jeito mesmo. Então por que não pegar uma placa que pelo menos vai ter um pouquinho de VRAM para quando você decidir jogar uns jogos modo história, ela pelo menos ter VRAM suficiente para ter um pouco de longevidade. E claro, se você vai considerar uma 5050, já considera também uma Arc B580, que tem uma performance muito boa, inclusive próxima do RTX 4060, em alguns casos até da 5060, tem 12 GB de VRAM e tem uma boa performance em Ray Tracing. Tem Frame Generation? Em alguns casos já tem também por conta dos ISS. Então tem todos esses modelos e claro, tem também os modelos da AMD que você pode considerar, apesar de a gente, no momento, não ter uma RX 9060, a gente sabe que em algum momento ela vai chegar. E tem modelos de gerações anteriores, uma RX 7600, uma RX 6600 mesmo. É uma seção do mercado que é extremamente apertada para opções. E a 5050, ela não agrega exatamente muita coisa para esse segmento, né? Mas sabe o que significa o lançamento da 5050? Significa que você tem que simplesmente calar a boca e comprar a placa da Nvidia. Essa é a parte mais triste, porque, de novo, eu ainda considero a 5050 um produto interessante porque existe um público para ela. Ela pode não atender em todos os pontos do tipo, realmente não teve um salto, realmente ela pode talvez não ter um custo-benefício. Se você tá procurando aquela placa de vídeo baratinha, eu tenho a solução para você. A Nvidia finalmente lançou aquele produto que vai encaixar no seu imbatível, né? Se ela não precisar de conector de energia. Faz muito que fala, isso aí é muito complicado, eu só quero jogar meu Fortnite. Isso ali vai ser na casa dos 12%, 15% talvez no pior cenário. É claro que nesse caso você perde o suporte ao Frame Generation. Na série 40 já tem o Frame Generation. A 50 tem o Multi-Frame Generation. Mas lembra que eu falei? Isso é só pra dar fluidez. Então se você precisa de fluidez para jogos single player, tem a 4060. Se você vai jogar jogos mais competitivos, tipo Fortnite, CS, você pode simplesmente pegar uma RTX 3060. Você já vai ter que gastar com fonte de qualquer jeito mesmo. Então por que não pegar uma placa que pelo menos vai ter um pouquinho de VRAM para quando você decidir jogar uns jogos modo história, ela pelo menos ter VRAM suficiente para ter um pouco de longevidade. E claro, se você vai considerar uma 5050, já considera também uma Arc B580. Tem uma performance muito boa, inclusive próxima do RTX 4060, em alguns casos até da 5060, tem 12 GB de VRAM e tem uma boa performance em Ray Tracing. Tem Frame Generation? Em alguns casos já tem também por conta dos ISS. Então tem todos esses modelos e claro, tem também os modelos da AMD que você pode considerar, apesar da gente no momento não ter uma RX 9060, a gente sabe que em algum momento ela vai chegar. E tem modelos de gerações anteriores, uma RX 7600, uma RX 6600 mesmo. É uma seção do mercado que é extremamente apertada para opções. E a 5050 ela não agrega exatamente muita coisa para esse segmento, né? Mas sabe o que significa o lançamento da 5050? Significa que você tem que simplesmente calar a boca e comprar a placa da Nvidia. Essa é a parte mais triste, porque, de novo, eu ainda considero a 5050 um produto interessante porque existe um público para ela. Ela pode não atender em todos os pontos do tipo, realmente não teve um salto, realmente ela pode talvez não ter um custo-benefício, ela pode ter vários atributos e vários defeitos. O problema é simplesmente o calha a boca e compre a minha placa porque eu não quero que você teste ela. Isso pra mim, né? Basicamente. E sim, a gente pode comprar uma 5050. Eu não posso comprar uma 5090, mas uma 5050 dá pra comprar pra trazer pra vocês e mostrar a performance pra que você não precise ter uma surpresa. E de repente tem opções melhores. Tipo no mercado de usados. O que você vai comprar uma 5050? Você pode comprar uma 2080 Ti usada por pouco mais do que pode custar uma 5050. Ou mesmo uma RTX 3070. Ou mesmo gastar um pouco mais e comprar uma 3080 ou uma 4060 ou uma 5060. Ou, enfim, tem várias opções. A 5050 ela pode ser, caso você tenha um limite, fala, não, só posso gastar isso ou não, eu quero uma placa de vídeo nova com garantia, ela ainda poderia ser uma opção. Mas essa estratégia da Nvidia de simplesmente ignorar o lançamento das placas e jogar no colo das Nvidias locais, ou tipo, se vira aí com os caras, pra gente aqui a gente não vai mandar placa para ninguém, se o cara quiser, o cara que compra. Essa é uma estratégia extremamente prejudicial para o consumidor. Isso quer dizer que vocês vão deixar de comprar Nvidia? Claro que não, porque ainda tem produtos bons. Uma atitude da empresa não torna o produto ruim, torna só a atitude ruim. Mas não deixa de ser desrespeitoso com o cliente, com você. Porque se tem pessoas que podem testar o produto e dizer pra você, ou dar pelo menos a opinião, várias opiniões diferentes sobre o produto, por que você é obrigado a confiar na fabricante que tá querendo te entubar um produto e arrancar o teu dinheiro? Tá, isso é consensual, você eventualmente tá dando dinheiro pra ela pra receber o produto, não tá te obrigando. Mas ainda assim, poderia ser uma relação um pouco mais honesta do que simplesmente olha meus números com todos esses gráficos com barras enormes que, na verdade, se você vesse um review independente, você ia ver que é diferente. A 5050 chega no Brasil, provavelmente chega num preço mais elevado, depois deve ter uma estabilização do preço, que é quando a gente vai saber se ela compensa mais ou compensa menos. E pra você ver os testes, é só você se inscrever no canal, clicar no sininho, receber as notificações aí em primeira mão, que a gente vai comparar com toda essa galera que tá aqui. A gente tem B580, 3060, 4060, 5060, tem todo mundo pra comparar com a 5050 e talvez sim ela seja um produto interessante pra você. Como eu disse, é importante ter esse produto, porque no Brasil ela é uma placa relevante. Eu sei, lá fora provavelmente você vai ver, sei lá, tipo o Gamers Next falando que é um desperdício de areia, ou um desperdício de silício fazer essa placa, mas talvez no Brasil ela tenha um lugar pra existir, principalmente com a 3060 indo embora e com a 4060, sabe-se lá, durando quanto tempo no mercado. O que vocês acharam da 5050? Deixa aí nos comentários, aproveita, deixa o like, se inscreve no canal e clica no sininho pra receber as notificações de novos vídeos. Eu ficando por aqui, valeu, falou e até a próxima.
The reason for it must be some incredibly complicated, difficult to demystify underlying basis for some kind of pricing, scientific methodology, or
There's an
it's
incident
because it
behind.
sucks. The reason is that it sucks.
We're gonna be rich.
We just got done crawling through 450 GPU listings to try and understand how much of MSRP is still alive. One of the biggest takeaways is that several models of the AMD RX 9070 XT have actually increased in price since launch, including evaporation of a lot of the original MSRP models, but also the average cost over MSRP for in-stock listings of GPUs is still elevated. RTX 5090s across Best Buy, Amazon, and Newegg are $1,054 more than baseline, a 50% increase. The RTX 5080 is typically $570 more than MSRP, with the 9070 XT typically $275 over MSRP for the in-stock listings. But this chart isn't perfect because we're relying on in-stock listings, and those will bias towards more expensive cards. And that is why we made this chart. This shows the majority of current series graphics cards that don't have a single model in stock at MSRP, and when we have seen them restocked at retailers via tracking services, they've gone so fast we have to question how many are actually made. This chart shows the spread of cards by price, where we look at the minimum up to the maximum price for each model. But these aren't the only charts we made for this video. We made a lot of them. They look something like the ones we're flashing through the screen now. But taking a step back and looking at the GPU market, we thought this world could use some more absurdity in it. And so we took all of those things and then we put them into charts, pivot tables, and all this other stuff. We tried to make it make sense. Like scrying, except it's a spreadsheet instead of like a pool of water or a scry stone or something. Before that, this video is brought to you by the Antac Flux series of cases. We previously benchmarked and independently reviewed the Flux Pro case and found it to be one of the best cases we tested last year. The Flux Pro features the modern trend of wood accents while also focusing on a high airflow design. We found its performance to be among the best in our thermal testing. The case also has a number of ease of installation features to make assembly and cable management easier. Learn more at the link in the description below. Anyway, one of the things that we did was call a bunch of board partners and speak off record, including some system integrators, and I learned something that has been true for a couple of launches now, unfortunately, which is that a couple of them told us that they don't really intend to make that many MSRP cards because the margin isn't high enough. So they kind of ship enough out into the channel to satisfy the fact that it can technically exist and to make, this feels a little gross to say, but one of the companies did literally refer to NVIDIA as, and I'm quoting here, this is a direct quote, as quote, NVIDIA is my daddy, end quote. I want to be very clear, that is a quote from a company. Anyway, the context of the quote was, they're trying to not piss them off. and helping to not piss them off is shipping at least something at MSRP to maintain the facade of it all. So anyway, that was one of the things that we did with talking to some of these companies. A $2,000 MSRP for NVIDIA's 5090 doesn't mean anything if the cheapest 5090 in stock costs $900 more than the price that was given on stage. And 3 months ago from the AMD side, we were told by AMD that it was inaccurate to call the 9070 XT's $600 MSRP quote launch only pricing, even though right now it's even less available at $600 than it was at launch. Out of the 26 current listings, only one is priced at MSRP, and it's not even in stock. Additionally, 70% of the 9070 XT listings that have remained listed since launch have seen price increases, so even when they're higher, they aren't stable. Interestingly, but also predictably, given the NVIDIA to AMD market share disparity of 92% to 8%, GPU availability by count when totaled had NVIDIA Plus partner models at nearly 50 total listings per model when we checked, with a total of 315 different SKUs listed on North American retailers. AMD had a total of 77 SKUs listed, with Intel at 28. They also launched fewer devices, but what's important is the SKUs per model. AMD was around 14 to 26, and NVIDIA options typically have almost 2 times as many devices as the high end. That includes overclock cards, 2 fans, 3 fans, 1 fan, fat heatsinks, skinny heatsinks, RGB, white, black, waifu, devil, and so forth. This data was interesting but also predictable. It's one of those rich get richer scenarios where because NVIDIA is already successful, it gets more successful as a result of its existing success. It makes sense. The partners also make more money and sell more cars when they sell NVIDIA. And so there's reasons that they have more NVIDIA models. It's not some big weird conspiracy in this particular instance. It's just the nature of they sell more of those. It's 92% to 8% market share, as we just mentioned. But the point of all this is, for a user especially who is less familiar with the current GPU market, if they land on a retailer like Newegg and they see 47 SKUs of RTX 5060 and then they encounter 17 of, say, 9060 XTs or something, the chances of them landing on a 9060 XT when knowing little about the market, it's a lot lower, just mathematically. So in all our reviews recently, we've kind of ended them by saying we need to revisit the pricing a little bit later to see how things stabilize. And that's what we're looking at now. Spoiler alert, not stable, but it's time to revisit it anyway. This is not conclusive. Pricing is constantly changing. International pricing is also constantly changing. And it gives us a starting point to better understand the GPU space just broadly. We're looking at data in a couple different ways that makes it kind of fun. But again, just to be extremely clear with everyone, this is not fully conclusive because even in, say, the 1 week or so, maybe 10-day latency where it takes us to put all of it together, edit it, publish it, all that stuff, there's a little bit of flux, but it should give us a good baseline. All right, so today we are analyzing the currently available video cards on the market, looking at the pricing, the availability of in-stock listings, the split in models for a given SKU, and we have a lot to go over, but we're going to start with some of the broadest findings. Using only in-stock first-party listings from Newegg, Amazon, and Best Buy, we found that across all current series GPUs, the average price for available cards was typically around 30% greater than MSRP and around $200 more. But that's averaging everything. Geomeans also listed just to account for some of the differences in data sets, but the worst is the RTX 5090 at $1,054 over baseline. The so-called best by percentage is the 5060 Ti 8GB, which is awful because it's a terrible GPU that shouldn't exist. And that's also why it's not as marked up. We think it's a scam designed for tricking pre-built buyers. Breaking into smaller segments, NVIDIA's and AMD's higher end and Intel's Battlemage GPUs see average available prices 45 to 55% over MSRP. Mid-tier cards are experiencing a 20 to 30% increase over MSRP for their average prices. At the low end, increase over MSRP for each card's average price lowers to the 10 to 20% range. Now we're going to get more into it. This section defines some of our methodology. So today we are focusing primarily on GPUs with in-stock listings at the time we collected all the data. And the reason for that is just because we've observed that some cards in restock, the price changes. It can be up or down. We've seen a lot of them going up recently. And so it's easiest to look at in-stock listings. And we did also collect out-of-stock listing information where it was available, and we put that together in some of the other charts. So our intention is to represent what's actually available in the new GPU market right now. And the hardest part of all of this has been that pricing and stock have changed day to day. By the time the video goes up, it's going to change again, but what we're looking for is a baseline. We'll start with current GPU pricing and availability before digging into more specific price increases like the 9070 XT and the partner models. And as an important note here too, we obviously don't have the actual unit count of any given listing from these retailers, so it's not, you can get the listings and how many listings there are. That doesn't tell us how many units fall into that bucket. And so one thing we can't know is when we look at the percent split between listings of a given price across the market, how many units are being sold at the lower versus the higher end. You can kind of take a guess based on logic, but you get the idea. So let's get into some of the data. This chart compares each GPU's average price for in-stock listings to its MSRP. The red segment represents the difference in dollar amount. Intel's B580 average in-stock price is $130 more than its given MSRP of $250, amounting to a $380 average price. However, oddly and unfortunately for specifically Intel, most of this comes from one partner. Gunner is regularly charging $380 to $430 for B580s via its Wheelie House store, despite other vendors selling the B580 at $300. This is a natural problem with having so few board vendors. Back to the chart, AMD's 9070 XT average in-stock price ends up $275 more than its $600 MSRP, resulting in an average price of $875. As expected, the average price over MSRP seems to increase with the class of card, which explains why all the 8GB GPUs, especially those with alternative larger versions, sit towards the top of the chart, with the available models costing around $40 more than MSRP on average. NVIDIA's most egregious price increases come from its 5090 and 5080 GPUs, which we couldn't fit on this chart without skewing all the other results, so we made another one. Here they are, blowing out the scale of the chart at $1,054 and $570 over MSRP.
We're gonna be rich.
For average price over MSRP by percent, the RTX 5080 now tops the chart, which isn't a good thing this time, with an average in-stock price 57% greater than its MSRP. Intel's Battle Mage cards follow closely, both around 51% over MSRP for the average prices of their available listings, despite having the two lowest MSRPs of any current series GPUs. For AMD, the largest percent increase comes from its 9070 XT and amounts to a 46% more expensive average price. As for the current availability of cards at MSRP, we have this chart. The RTX 5060 and 9060 XT 8GB hold the most in-stock listings for MSRP, with 8 and 6 listings. AMD's 9060 XT is actually the only non-NVIDIA current series GPU that has any model cards available at MSRP, with 6 of 8 listings in stock at the time of writing. The good news is that no one is buying it. The bad news is that it exists anyway. With 14 of the current 20, 4 NVIDIA GPUs compose 70% of the in-stock MSRP listings. While NVIDIA offers more total listings at MSRP, AMD generally allows a better ratio of listings at MSRP. For instance, NVIDIA's 5060 Ti 8GB has 5 of its total 42 listings, or 12%, priced at MSRP, while AMD's 9060 XT 8GB offers 8 of 20, or 40% of models listed at MSRP. The downside is that this is for the 8GB model, so while it's good that more are at MSRP, again, it shouldn't exist. That being said, those offerings may really only be a factor at launch. At this point, any listings that are priced at MSRP but out of stock don't really matter if we don't know if they'll ever be restocked again at the same price. And again, that's what some partners told us too. Some of them have no intention of maintaining good stock levels of the cheapest cards right now. Sadly, over half of the current series GPUs don't have any MSRP listings in stock. At the time of writing this, Intel doesn't have anything even listed at MSRP, in stock or not, across the 3 retailers we looked at. Here are the total counts with an important note. Again, this is listings, not units, so we don't know how many units there are in total. Based on the totals of SKUs at least, the RTX 5070 is the most available new GPU on the market right now, with 36 of 45 listings available, closely followed by the 5060 Ti 8GB and the 5060. AMD's most available GPU is its 9060 XT 8GB variant, with 18 of 20 listings in stock at the time of writing this. NVIDIA occupies almost the entire upper half of this chart, alongside AMD's 9060 XT 8GB. More in-stock cards that suck, like the 8GB 5060 Ti and 9060 XT, probably is a good indicator. Hopefully that indicator is that people aren't buying them, rather than there just being that many. This next chart focuses it only to percentage of in-stock listings. The same important note applies here, which is this is percentage of listings in stock, not the actual units in stock. Intel's B570 is the most available card by listing, at 92% in stock listings, or 11 of 12, which isn't too far ahead of Intel's other Battle Mage GPU, holding 75% availability for the listing. For AMD and NVIDIA, the two most available cards based on percentage are the 8GB variants of both the 9060 XT and the 5060 Ti, sitting around 90 and 81% of listings in stock. On the low end, we saw nearly half the GPUs on the chart in a range between 40 and 50% listings available. The problem is that the listings which are unavailable, so the absent percentage here, are typically the MSRP units. During the AMD 9070 XT launch, AMD was clearly sensitive about credible claims that its launch price was suppressed by rebates and might be temporary. In response, AMD's Frank Hazer released this statement to any press who asked, including us, saying, quote, "It is inaccurate that $550 and $600 MSRP is launch-only pricing. We expect cards to be available from multiple vendors at $550 or $600, excluding region-specific tariffs and or taxes, based on the work we've done with our AIB partners, and more are coming. At the same time, AIBs have different premium configurations at higher price points, and those will also continue," end quote. Only 3 months later, and both the 9070 and the 9070 XT currently have 0 cards available at MSRP, despite having decent supply or higher up in the model hierarchy. At the time of writing this, the 9070 XT only has 1 of 26 listings priced at MSRP, and it's not in stock. Hazer also previously stated this, quote, "Demand today for our new AMD Radeon cards has been phenomenal. We are working with our AIBs to replenish stock at our partners ASAP in the coming days and weeks. MSRP pricing, excluding region-specific tariffs and or taxes, will continue to be encouraged beyond today, so don't despair," end quote. Conveniently, we just so happened to have a pricing spreadsheet that we compiled during the 9070 XT's launch. At launch, Newegg and Best Buy had a combined 27 9070 XT models listed, with 6 for MSRP. Out of the 21 listings that have remained since launch until now, 15, or 71% of them, have had their prices increased. The price has gone up for these. On top of that, 5 of the original 6 listings priced at MSRP for launch have seen increased pricing, and the other one is no longer listed. 3 months later, with one out-of-stock MSRP listing of total 26 listings, we believe the MSRP functionally was a special price. Our next chart portrays current price ranges, using each GPU's cheapest and most expensive in-stock first-party listings. Again, this is agnostic to units available. The $250 to $500 range is the most competitive segment for sub-$1,000 GPUs right now. It holds listings from 7 different current generation GPUs with at least 2 offerings each from NVIDIA, AMD, and Intel. For some additional perspective on what the market was looking like just 3 months ago, this is what we said in our 9070 XT review, the day before its March 5th launch. We did a quick look at Newegg for what was in stock, and there was nothing. It was all gone. So when we checked Newegg yesterday, the only card that was between $450 and $650 sold first party and not refurbished was the 7800 XT. This is madness. At the time of writing this, first party listings across retailers were in stock for 6 different current gen GPUs in that same range. On Newegg, we found 25 in stock first party listings between $450 and $650, mostly consisting of RTX 3070s and Ti's. Now, that sounds like a huge increase in GPU availability at the given price range in a relatively short amount of time. However, despite the increase in listings, none of the newly added model cards are available for MSRP. Once again, we had to move NVIDIA's 5080 and 5090 results to a separate chart for this one. Including them illustrates how wide of a price gap exists between these high-end GeForce GPUs and every other current series GPU. Instead of $250 increments, the segments now become 11 model GPUs under $1,000, 1 GPU model around $1,600, give or take, and 1 GPU model over $3,000. AMD and Intel failing to compete in the high-end GPU market exaggerates this gap. If a consumer wants a new high-end consumer card, there's one option for the GPU manufacturer. This is NVIDIA taking advantage of its lack of competition in this segment by charging whatever it wants. At the same time, it is also up to AMD and Intel to actually compete, not up to NVIDIA to bring themselves down. So there needs to be a balance here from everybody, ideally. This chart shows the differences in price and availability by NVIDIA's AIB partners using both the in and out of stock listings. We found that Asus held the highest average price for 4 of 7 50 series card models. Conversely, Zotac and Gigabyte tied with 3 each for the lowest average prices by partners of NVIDIA's current GPU series, though Zotac also had the highest average price for the 5090 and 5080, so appears to be trying to make up the margin there. A more apparent difference was in the actual number of listings offered by each AIB partner. Gigabyte consistently supplied the most listings for model cards, with an average of 16 listings for each 50 series GPU. That'd be OC models, white, black, RGB variations, things like that. Zotac, on the other hand, consistently offered the least amount of models, with an average of 6 listings per GPU, with Asus and MSI often finding themselves around the midpoint of the other 2 manufacturers by listing count. That recaps most of the situation now. Again, this is not perfect. When you're dealing with price and different regions, so we're looking at 3 major retailers in the US, for instance, that already is a lot of variables. It's not as fixed as a lot of like testing, for example, and the same goes when you go international. So for this, we really heavily focused the data collection on the 3 sort of largest vendors, and then we went across the whole damn market and 450 plus or minus listings for video cards. So there's a lot already, and that's focused heavily, on just trying to understand, get a bunch of data, look at it, just see what interesting things jumped out at us. So that was kind of the approach. The approach was basically, we already know the pricing is not good, but let's see if anything interesting emerges from the data. So, as MSRP continues to lose meaning and our ability to provide value judgments and reviews becomes more difficult, we're going to continue to put stuff together like this, where we revisit it a little later. When we compare cards in review, we'd expect the card with the higher MSRP to be in stock at higher prices too. That makes sense. It makes sense that the baseline is higher. But now even the suggested price of cards has lost a lot of its meaning. So in the past, one of the things that's been clear is if there's a suggested price, like with the 1080 Ti, we talked about this in the fake MSRPs video and some others, where back in that era, the average price increase of even the highest end partner models with all these XOC features and Kingpin cards and whatever, it was lower as a percent price increase over baseline MSRP than what you see today from cards that aren't that special. So like a KP card, you can get for a lower percent increase in price than something like a Strix model, which is nowhere even close in quality or capability. So both vendors would definitely recognize that. So it's gotten worse. We've already showed those numbers in the past. All of this makes it clear that the suggested price, it doesn't really mean as much as it used to. Despite having a greater MSRP than the 9060 XT 16GB, the 5060 Ti 8GB has a cheaper minimum, a cheaper average, and a cheaper maximum price for its in-stock listings. Now that's an interesting data point, and the reason for it must be some incredibly complicated, difficult to demystify underlying basis for some kind of pricing, scientific methodology, or it's because it sucks. The reason is that it sucks. Meanwhile, the 9060 XT 8GB is also readily available, much closer to MSRP than basically any other card that we've looked at, alongside the 5060 Ti 8GB. And the reason for that one is equally complicated. It is also because it sucks. They both are awful digital cards. Now, if AMD were somehow aware that its 9060 XT 16GB would cost more than the 5060 Ti 8GB on average, and the company still decided to give the card a $350 baseline MSRP, so it would appear to offer greater value in all reviews at its launch, that would be extremely deceitful. Yeah, it sure would be. At certain price points, we found the comparative value of cards can shift drastically between when the cards are valued at MSRP versus when they're valued at the average cost of in-stock prices. NVIDIA's 5070 Ti, for example, is priced 25% higher than the 9070 XT in theory, yet the average in-stock price of the 5070 Ti is 10 to 15% more than the average price of the 9070 XT's in-stock listings. The differences between these price increases is meaningful, and it demonstrates MSRP's ability to continue to mislead. And again, to re-emphasize a point we've now emphasized in 2 separate videos this year, we understand that the MSRP is intended as a baseline, meaning some amount of cards will be available at this price, and then some of the higher end, fancier SKUs with extra bells and whistles and quality features, whatever, worth it or not, those are going to be higher. That's how it has always worked, and that's fine. The difference, again, is that the amount of these cards proportionally has increased, mathematically provable, versus cards at or near baseline MSRP. And likewise, the top end of that price increase over the reference is much higher, with far fewer that you get as a result of it. And so this is where we're seeing that stretch of the stack, and in some ways it kind of matches with some of the shrinkflation stuff we've seen with the GPUs themselves, but really it's just the companies are getting more bold with how much they increase the price for not really adding a whole lot of extra value in relation to that price increase, and a lot of that is they're going to sell them anyway. So anyway, that's kind of it for this one. It was interesting. Like we said at the beginning, this is not fully conclusive. It's not easy to be fully conclusive with something like this because we're already looking at hundreds and hundreds of listings across lots of retailers. There's a lot more out there, but that gives us at least a baseline to re-examine sort of the price situation right now for the cards that we've been benchmarking throughout the year. And we'll keep revisiting this as it further develops, but that's it for this one. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more. Go to store.gamersnexus.net or patreon.com/gamersnexus to help us out directly. Helps a lot because this kind of stuff takes a lot of research time for us to put together, and your direct support through those avenues helps us fund it. So thank you for watching. Subscribe for more. See you all next time.
About 1 lap of fuel left. R1 has taken the lead. Don't forget to pit this lap for more fuel. Pit box in 10, 5, 3, 2, 1. Right here. That's it, go!
São os dois direitos do cartinho.
10 minutes to go. It's going well, keep at it. Right side. Clear the right. Left side. They said you cut the course. Clear on the left. The leader just did a 27.184. Left side. Clear on the left. Left side. Clear on the left. Right side. Clear the right. Right side. Stay on the left. Clear the right. Five minutes to go. You have about 5 laps of fuel left.
That's it.
What we did now.
Stay on the left. Clear the right.
Sorry.
The leader is coming up on you. They're not our fight.
Left side. Clear on the left.
White flag next time by a stripe. Right side. Clear the right. Right side. Clear the right. You have about 2 laps of fuel left.
Get her in, get in.
Right side. All right, there's the checkered flag. Great job, driver. They said you cut the course.